we're still getting phone calls. We're still selling work. And our start dates are 3 years out. So, and sometimes you lose some work because of that. People don't want to wait. I'm not going to live that long. I've heard that quite a few times. I'm not going to live that long. You're not going to get my car done before I die. So I hear that a lot.
Welcome to the Gearheads and Gasoline podcast, where we dive into the high-octane world of market-leading shop owners, shop employees, and automotive enthusiasts from the aftermarket, restoration, performance, and racing industries. So strap in as we take you on an awesome journey with our guests as they share their real-life stories, lessons learned, business advice, and unfiltered insights to help you beat the school of hard knocks. Gearheads and Gasoline, fueling your success.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barry Alt with Motorhead Digital, and my co-host is Annette Bauer with Annette Bauer Creative.
How you doing?
We're thrilled to have Russell Jacobs, owner of RJ Cars, joining the Gearheads and Gasoline podcast today. Russell has been at the helm of RJ Cars for over 35 years. Based in Arkport, New York, RJ Cars specializes in muscle and classic car restoration. Under Russell's leadership, the team has meticulously restored over 95 cars with a special focus on Mopars, Russell's favorite. Their exceptional work has been recognized in top industry publications like Mopar Muscle, Mopar Collector's Guide, and the Shop magazine. RJ Cars is also a fixture at the Carlisle Chrysler Nationals, where they showcase their stunning restorations. Russell's expertise is highly regarded, as evidenced by his participation in multiple expert panels. We're pumped to have Russell on board, so let's dive in. Well, thanks for joining us, Russ.
All right, Russell. So we typically like to just kick off the podcast doing something a little bit different and kind of throw you for a loop. So with that being said, we always like to ask this question: what is your favorite drink?
What is my favorite drink?
Yep.
My staple would be Jim Beam. So, but yeah, bourbon whiskey is usually my favorite. So,
Okay. Barry is,
Cool.
Are you still an old-fashioned fan, Barry?
I was just at Spring Carlisle and had like 3 of them. So yes, I am. My new favorite. I still don't have the fixings for them. I got to stop and get all the stuff for them.
There you go.
So, anyways, so we have a number of topics, Russ. We wanted to start off with, how'd you get started? And in the intake form, you had mentioned that you started working on cars when you were 14 years old. Tell us about how you got interested in cars and working on them.
I just remember, even as a young child, like anything that had a motor on it, whether it was a mini bike, snowmobile, tractor, hot rod car, go-kart, anything with an engine on it, just, got my attention. And, as I got older and was old enough to drive, I started dragging cars home at 14 and working on them, much to my mother's chagrin. I remember her yelling at me and saying, "You're not going to turn this place into a junkyard." So at her farm. So, and then eventually that's where I ended up starting my body shop, was at her farm. So, and I didn't even tell her I was going to do it. I just did it.
Sometimes asking for forgiveness versus permission is so much easier.
Absolutely.
Was there something that really got you to go, "Hey, I can do this for a living"? What really sent you in that direction?
I started working when I was 10 years old and just doing odd jobs, mowing lawns, whatever I could do for neighbors and stuff. And even from a really young age, I always knew I was going to be self-employed. Don't know why, but always knew I was going to be self-employed. So I worked on farms as a teenager. Then when I was 16, I had a 71 Chevy Impala. I needed some paint work done on it. And I took it to a local body shop and talked to the guy about painting it. And I also had a 70 Ford Mustang Fastback that I dragged home to my mother's barn. So I didn't start out with Mopars, believe it or not. And so I talked to a local guy about painting my car, and then actually he needed some help. He was starting out, and I ended up coming on as a helper. I didn't know anything. He taught me everything, and I worked there for 4 or 5 years, and then I quit my job the day I turned 21. So, but I always liked working on the older cars in the shop. I really wasn't I did collision work because I had to, but I always wanted to work on the old stuff. So that's what I like to do.
And you mentioned Mopars, and in your bio, we talked about Mopars and Chrysler Nationals and all that. What really, I mean, we've posted a lot of restoration projects on your website, and they're almost always Mopars. What really took you in that direction to be the expert on Mopars?
I remember being really young, like my aunt and uncle had a Roadrunner, so that's one of my first recollections of Mopars, because the Roadrunner emblem, the sticker, was like eye level to me at a young age. So I remember thinking how cool that is. Look at that Roadrunner on there, and you watch the cartoon, so that's sales point, And then I had a cousin who had a like 72 or 3 Dart with a 340 in it that was fun, and neighbor had a 67 GTX, and I was around Dodge trucks as a kid. My family drove Dodge trucks, and as I got to be a teenager, like a Challenger came up for sale, and I decided to buy it as a project car. And then I ended up, I bought a 70 Dart to get the 340 motor out of it for the Challenger. And I just got into buying them and driving them as a teenager. And then it just stuck from there for some reason. I don't know. They always worked for me. I don't know. Fords always seemed to fight me, so I always did better with the Mopars. So I did have some Chevys over the years, and I do respect, like, big black Chevys especially, a lot of respect. So those cars are awesome too.
Cool. Don't you wish you could go back in time and just buy a bunch of them and just park them in a building?
I can still point out spots where there was cars parked in people's backyards over the years that I recall that I should have bought.
Wow.
That's hilarious. Hey, so let's talk about success. Your RJ Cars is celebrating 35 years this year, and that's an awesome run. Can you tell us when you felt you made it, or felt personally successful in your business and personal?
I always tell people, well, I starved my family for the first dozen years. So, and it's kind of the truth, because I really started out with less than nothing. I mean, when I started working in the old barn at Mom's farm, I didn't the place wasn't even insulated, so, and I started out in the fall, and I bought a heater and threw it in there, and I borrowed money from my grandfather to buy a compressor. I bought a nice compressor, and I had some tools that I had collected working in the body shop. And so I just decided this is what I'm going to do. So, and then from there, I worked out of there for a few years, and then I bought my father-in-law's property and moved my business here where I'm at now, and had bigger facilities, but I still had a lot of work to do to bring those up to spec. So I would say about a dozen years in, I got to the point where we were doing full-blown restorations and working to get them in magazines and stuff and get them featured. And that's when things started taking off. And at that point, I also incorporated the business and got it growing, where I was hiring more staff and becoming more professional with it. So I think it took me about a dozen years in to get where I felt like I was really making it the way I wanted to make it.
So how long have you been at the location that you're at?
I moved the shop here. I started in 89. I moved the shop here in 94, and I ended up buying the property out in December of 95. So I've been here since December.
That's awesome. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That makes you a staple in your community.
Yeah.
So is there one thing you can put your finger on that contributed to your success?
Well, lots of things. I did a lot of coaching and personal improvement over the years to, keep myself intact and deal with being a business owner. And, probably the one thing that really drove me more than anything, I had to think about this, this particular question. And this is kind of a sad thing, but it also drove me to be successful. I lost my brother in 93. So my little brother, and that actually drove me to success in a lot of ways, even though it was tragic. it just drove me to be successful and to want to make things work. And, that's what he would have wanted. It actually, my family took off then with my wife and my son and stepson at that time. And so I had purpose with my family. Losing my brother made me think about a lot of things. And so although that was a tough thing to go through, it also drove me to more success, to be honest.
I think that's a great way to be able to honor him is, like you opted to focus on success in a way to honor his memory.
Right.
I think that's great.
So still in success, you've had some employees that have moved on to teaching and things like that. But what are the cool things you do with? Oh, really? Yeah, I know of one.
Yeah.
What are you doing to with your employees, team members, to celebrate the team, morale building, to foster that success for them to move on to in their lives bigger and better things for them? I
try to. One of the biggest things I think I do is like if someone has a 5 or 10 year, the 5-year marks for people, their anniversaries, I always make that special and do some really cool things. Like, 1 year we had like 3 different anniversaries for people, like I think a 10-year and a couple 5 years at the same time for employees. So we did a big dinner, went out to dinner, and I gave out some awards and some bonuses and different things to people, and tried to make that special when we have those big cornerstone anniversary points for people's employment. So
that's awesome. How many do you know off the top of your head? How many of your employees have gone on to teach or start their own business?
Well, oh man. I've had a few of them start their own businesses over the years. And going back the full 35 years of employees, it's hard to even remember them all. And then I've had some that have become BOCES teachers, some that have become state teachers. So it's a pretty big list. I'd probably, and I've had some that have gone on to do other things too. I had a young guy here years ago that came to me and he says, Russ, and he worked for me during high school. And he said, Russ, he says, I'm looking to go to college. He says, I'm either going to go to auto body for college or I'm going to go to engineering. I said, how about you go to engineering? I said, you can learn auto body. And I said, I think you already got a pretty good grip on that. And he actually kept working for me on and off through his college career and became an engineer. And then years later, I hired him to do some engineering for my building additions because I needed him for my permits. And so I hired him to do that, which was kind of cool. So
Heck yeah, that's cool. Especially when you have like that full circle moment when, like you've kind of nurtured and mentored somebody and been able to be impactful in their future, in their life. And then you're able to say like, hey, now you kind of established yourself and you've learned the skills that you wanted to, and there's skills that we just mutually can benefit from, and being able to kind of reinvest in him. I think that's super awesome.
I've had one of my great guys that was here like 11 years. He moved on and became a state instructor at college for auto body, which was pretty cool. I just, a lot of BOCES instructors, some have gone on to be insurance adjusters, a lot of different things. I had one young guy that went on to work quite successfully in car dealerships and such as a salesperson, and he came back later and said, man, I used to do really cool work when I worked for you. Years later. So I've had people come back and reflect with me on their time with me here at RJ Cars, and very positive things have come out of that over the years. A lot of good feedback from people. So that's always nice.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Motorhead Digital. Motorhead Digital are digital marketing experts for your automotive aftermarket, restoration, performance, race, and restyling shop. They help you supercharge your shop's website, social media, and entire online presence to attract those badass customers you're looking for. Check us out at motorheaddigital.com.
Let's talk about challenges and opportunities.
Okay.
What are the biggest challenges you face as a modern restoration shop?
Staffing is currently an issue, which is an issue in a lot of workplaces. We've had a lot of people out sick this year, just various stuff. And then I've got one guy out for hip replacement right now, who's one of my mechanics. And so that's tough, really tough. Sometimes cash flow is tough. I've got several big restorations going on at once, usually 6 to 8 at a time. And then if you happen to get a certain billing cycle where people are slow paying, then you start sweating a little bit. So cash flow can still, even after 35 years, be a little bit of an eye opener when you're making payroll and paying the bills. And I like to pay my bills every month, not let them lay. So, yeah, typical of any business, I guess, in some ways. Parts was an issue, especially during COVID. There still is an issue sometimes. We've swung back from that some. We had 1 year where things returning from vendors for services was a tough deal, and we're doing some workarounds with that. We've seen a lot of vendors leave, aged out, sold out, closed up. There's been a lot of that in recent years. I've lost some vendors. Like I lost one guy that I've been doing business with for almost a full 35 years I've been in business. Lost him. I had another guy who did chrome for me for almost the whole time I've been in business, and his chrome division, he closed down. A couple of chrome shops we use closed down this past, basically the first year they closed down, or right around there. So,
is that because of environmental stuff that's forcing them to shut down, or just?
Yeah, that's partial. The cost of the materials has gone through the roof, and environmental stuff is always tough for chrome shops. And what else was I going to say? The one shop had trouble because their staff aged out, and they started losing staff and couldn't keep up with the work, and it started affecting their business, and they had to close up. They couldn't keep up with everything. So,
yeah. We see that a lot in several different industries. Like even in the racing industry, we see that where you've got a lot of older generations that really can sit and teach some of the younger generation, even like some of the basic stuff, right? Like mechanical fuel is much easier to work with than, like having some kind of electric, like any kind of EFI is much more challenging than the mechanical stuff. But if you don't have somebody there to kind of teach you the grassroots of it, then you are in a big pickle with it. That's a really challenging thing. And that's one of the things that we look towards for the older generations to kind of pass down that generational knowledge. So I can definitely see how that would be a challenge in any environment.
I think another challenge that I was thinking in the back of my mind is just staying focused too, because when you're doing long-term projects, you have to keep focused on what is the next step, and keep moving those steps forward. It's not like having a collision job where you got it in the shop for a few days and you're slamming it in, slamming it out. So the restoration end of things, it's just a lot of forethought, a lot of project management, and keeping your focus on keep moving the project forward, because you can walk in at most any body shop that is not an actual restoration shop and find an old car sitting in the corner collecting a half-inch of dust or more. You see that in a lot of body shops, and that's not their focus, So, but being in the restoration business, I think it's even more important to stay focused on taking those next steps of that project along the way. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Have you, with those challenges, have you found workarounds for them or ways to address those so you can keep people in the shop, or parts coming in, things like that?
Yeah, we've done workarounds with vendors on the parts end of it. like right now with one of my full-time guy out with the hip replacement, we've brought in some part-time staff to help. That's not picking up all slack. However, it's helping a little bit, bringing in some part-timers to do some work and make that happen still. I've had to be on the shop floor a little bit more at times to help with things. But, when you got a guy that puts in 45 hours a week, and pretty productive guy, it's really hard to be down that guy for months, and I don't know when he's going to come back. His downtime was much more than we imagined when they first went into this. His issues with his hip were much worse than they thought when they got in there. So.
Oh, wow. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
So on the positive side, let's talk about opportunities. What opportunities do you see for your shop or other shops in 2024?
On a positive side, I'm going to say that, we're still getting phone calls, we're still selling work, and our start dates are 3 years out. So, and sometimes you lose some work because of that. People don't want to wait. I'm not going to live that long. I've heard that quite a few times. I'm not going to live that long. You're not going to get my car done before I die. So I hear that a lot. So, but yeah, I think the sales for restorations on that is still good, still strong. I don't think it's as strong now as maybe it was a couple years ago. There was a lot of demand a couple years ago, but it's still steady demand. We're still getting people signing on. And you have to tell people, like, look, the cost of things keep going up. So if I sign in you 3 years out, I don't know exactly what the costs are going to be 3 years now for a start date. So you just have to, forewarn them that, look, this is what we're proposing is going to be our rates and costs, but that could change by then too, because I've never been this far out before with start dates for restoration. So
that's crazy. That's awesome. That's crazy.
Double-edged sword, huh?
It is. If I quit taking work on right now, I figure I got 5 years worth of work still to do if I didn't take on any more contracts. So.
Jeez.
Wow. Hey, so can you share some business advice for RJ Cars, what you've learned from the School of Hard Knocks? With all the marketing channels available to shops to get in front of prospects, tell us, how you're marketing your business. What's worked best for you?
Sometimes,
what are you using right now? And I asked you two questions at once. So
that's okay. Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint what's working with marketing. I find that, if you're advertising in a couple different Mopar magazines and you're asking people when they call as a client or a prospective client, like, hey, where'd you hear about us? And they're like, oh, in one of the magazines. Okay, well, that's not super helpful, but good. I'm glad it was in a magazine. So, so we do like some trade magazines, the Mopar magazines. I've done Muscle Car Review. Locally, I do Life in the Finger Lakes magazine because I feel it's a high quality magazine. I like that. Going to the Carlisle shows, like you mentioned, social media, which we've done with Motorhead Digital, and now my daughter has taken over doing a lot of that in coordination with Motorhead Digital. My website I probably got the hugest photo gallery of any restoration shop in the world, I think. I don't know. It's extensive. So
you have 97 galleries. I counted them today.
That's not all of them. Darren keeps adding more. So
Yeah,
and my newsletters have been big. That's been a great sales thing. My newsletters over the years. We used to do quarterly, and I just can't keep up with it anymore. And so we do 2 to 3 a year now still, and then we do a monthly electronic version too. So the newsletters have been big for us, actually. The newsletters and the website, and it's like I said with the magazine part of it, it's really hard to tell. And shows used to be really good. I kind of got to the point where I thought shows weren't being as effective as they used to be for sales. A lot of people just, they're looking it up on the internet and trying to hire it off the internet, really. So I think the website and and the social media stuff is really where it's at nowadays. So in a lot of ways,
I think it's great that you guys, even though have the foresight to ask, like, hey, where did you hear about us from, or where did you see something about us? Because a lot of companies just, I think that becomes very absent-minded, like they're so like, okay, how can I help you? What can we do? That kind of thing, that they don't really stop to think like, hey, this is a really important part to our marketing, is finding out where our demographic is really, like we're hitting our demographic, where are they residing, or where are they shopping, or where are they, putting their cars at, or whatever it might be. So I think it's great that you are actually having that foresight, even if sometimes it doesn't help that much. It does kind of. So that's great.
Right. Yeah, we try to get that information when we can. So.
Mhm.
Are you still mailing the print newsletter as well when you do the
Yes.
the
Yeah,
newsletter?
we still do the print version of the Rev It Up newsletter. So.
Cool. For our listeners, what type of marketing or advertising, whatever, would you avoid? Would you recommend they just stay away from? Is there anything that you sunk money into and it was just like
Oh my
a
God.
black hole?
Now, Barry, you might know something about this stuff from way back in the day when websites started getting big. I had some guy come around and suckered me into putting money into, including me on a web mall. Do you remember that, web malls?
Uh-huh.
Oh
Yep.
man, I got taken on that deal. That was not good. That was not good. And then I think, like, there's a lot of people calling you all the time as a business owner wanting donations for this thing, that thing. It's great if you want to donate, but I mean, donate to what you feel is important. I don't think you're getting much advertising investment out of donating to local things, or I just think you have to be selective with that and what hits your heart and soul if you want to donate to a fund for something or an event or something. I know that you do some of that with local stuff, but it's stuff you're passionate about. There's so much of that stuff that you get hit with all the time, though, that I think is just not productive, and you're not getting a return on investment for it.
Yeah, we sponsor a local car show and part of the club, but I wanted to do that because I was passionate about it. We sponsor Dollars for Scholars, things like that. We've done that for years, even though I never had kids, just because I wanted to support the community, right?
Today's podcast is sponsored by Annette Bauer Creative. At Annette Bauer Creative, we understand the power of visual storytelling in transforming brands and driving growth. From capturing the essence of your products and services to showcasing the unique solutions you offer, our professional imagery and reels help bring your brand to life. Fuel your brand and ignite your vision at AnnetteBauerCreative.com.
All right. So we have talked about a lot and we have learned a whole lot. And I know that you and I have actually spent a little bit of time on the phone, courtesy of Barry sharing some of your information. So I appreciate that. One of the things, though, that I'm always curious about, and I always want to get the feedback from, is if you were to look at all the things that you know now, what would you share or give advice to a younger you?
Oh, interestingly enough, I did this for another business recently, a younger friend of mine. If I were to step back like 15 years in this, I would have initiated gearing my business to run without me more, so that when I'm now in my mid-50s, it would flow without me being here every day of the week. And now I'm kind of like, well, I don't really see that happening now, but if I'd initiated it then, it would have been already integrated into the process. And that's the one thing I kind of missed over the years, that I feel that I should have targeted that and done that. So, and I actually have a friend who owns another type of business, and I talked to him recently and actually shared a book that Barry and I have both read, and a couple other things with him, and talked him into growing his business in that fashion, because he's in his late 30s, I think. And I told him this is what I would do if I could go back to your age. And he took it seriously, and he's actually hired on some more people. He's growing his business in that fashion. And so I mentored him, and some of his employees have come and thanked me for the talks I've had with this gentleman. So,
Hey,
That's awesome. Is that, yeah. And is that, let me guess, Who Not How?
no, it was Traction.
Traction. Okay. I
Yeah.
got another book for him I got two more books for him to read and you to read. I'll just put them out there. One's called Who Not How.
I remember you talking
That's
to
a lot
Donna
about
that one.
Yeah. And she should read it too for her business, and Profit First. So there's two books that I come highly recommended. I love them. They've made a big difference in our business,
Nice.
along with Traction. So
I think that you hit on a really key point, right? Is that I see a lot of business owners do this. In fact, I work with several business owners who do this, who are just like so ingrained in their business that they don't know how to kind of remove themselves, not out of desire, but simply out of the processes, right? Like the day to day, the way things run, the way that you're involved in it, the way that it's integrated, all of those things. So I think that, the fact that you can coach somebody else on, hey, like don't do what I did in that perspective, but
Yeah.
do it better, right? Like be better and think about your future. It's very similar to like investing for retirement, right? Like you need to think about that early because you don't want to start thinking about investing when you're in your 50s because your time frame is less and your chances
You should start working your exit strategy long before you ever think about exiting, in my opinion, now looking back. And I tell people that too, what's your exit strategy going to be down the road? You should think about that now and have some kind of a outline and plan for that. So
100%. I think that is solid advice.
yeah, absolutely. So we want to talk about youth engagement a little bit and supporting the industry. With most shops struggling to fill positions for experienced fabricators, painters, electrical techs, back office people, what are you doing to support youth engagement, bring people into the industry, things like that?
I've hired people out of a BOCES level. I've hired people out of college level many times over the years. We bring in students, take them in on internships. We've done that many times over the years. I recently hired a neighbor kid. I just said, hey, this kid needs to learn something. And, he's a 14-year-old that, doesn't know which end of the broom is which, but we're teaching him. And unfortunately, New York State, with their minimum wage, is a little bit tough on us to hire a kid like that. I mean, you're paying the kid twice what he's worth and you're training him. So that's a tough deal for a business owner. But I also feel it's necessary to bring a kid in like that and give him some work skills and some structure. Kids aren't getting that. Like I said, I started working when I was 10 years old. I'd mow a half-acre lot for $3. So that'd be half my day with a push mower. And I was expected to clean the mower, service the mower, go to the store and pick up gas for the mower for the owner and change the oil if I needed it, So, and I had a couple neighbors I did that for. And, but $3 back then was $3. Now $3 is, you trip over it and leave it there. You wouldn't even stop to pick it up if you found $3. So, I had a good work ethic from a young age. If we had a snowstorm, I'm out shoveling snow and trying to make a couple dollars or whatever, or mow lawns, whatever. And then started working on farms. But, I look around, I live in a rural area, but there's no farms here anymore. The small farms that kids used to work on, it's not available to them anymore. And kids are on their video games and cell phones 24/7, so they're just not interested either, I think. I mean, I couldn't wait to start working, but I was, anomaly, I guess, on that note. But I do try to engage them. I'm looking at hiring another local kid that is here on a BOCES internship now. Matthew and I have talked about bringing this other kid in. We just started working with him this week, but we like him. We might try to get him in here part time also.
I think that's great. Like, it's generational investment, right? So just like you're saying, like looking around your local community, you're seeing that there aren't places for younger generations to even just occupy themselves, right? They don't have a chance to learn a new skill because there's no places for them to do it. And then the places that there are, like just like you said, the cost of bringing them in and do something is just not feasible for small businesses in a lot of situations. So
absolutely.
It's super important, like you totally in your exact scenario, right? Like you learned by doing it at a young age and building that work ethic and wanting something for yourself. And a lot of younger kids, don't necessarily have that same upbringing. They don't have somebody at home who's pushing them to not just sit in front of a cell phone or a video game.
Right. True.
So, speaking of the younger generation, I know your son Matt's in the business. I know McKenna's been in the business. I know McKenna's starting her own business, so that's cool. What's the plan? Is Matt going to take over? I know you were talking about doing some other stuff.
I think in the short term, Matt's going to do a little more. I think in the long term, Matt's done this for many years too. I mean, he's been in the shop since he was in diapers. So he's done all this and more. And his mechanical skills are way beyond mine at this point in his life. Matt has some other aspirations down the road, though, to do his own thing. And he probably won't do it as big as what RJ Cars is. I think he wants to keep it a little more contained for his taste. And so I would think that eventually he will exit and I will exit and we will find someone else to take over. McKenna, she is still here part-time. She got her associate's degree during COVID and then and drove back forth to college to get that. And then she went to nail tech school because she decided that she liked that. And she's very creative and very entrepreneurial. So she has started her own nail tech business, and she's totally amazing at it, mind-blowing. And I look at her and I think, oh my God, she is so much like me when I was 21 years old. She just turned 21 last week, and I'm thinking, holy smokes. And now she rented a room in a salon. She moved everything into there. She was doing some work out of her home before. Now she's got her license and everything. So she's licensed and all set up. And she's already got more work and a waiting list that she can't keep up with. And she's still coming in working for RJ Cars part-time and doing our promo stuff and doing office work for us. And last year I had a leg injury, and McKenna and her boyfriend Anthony, who also works here for me full-time, McKenna put together all the promo stuff, and they went to Carlisle for me and promoted RJ Cars, took care of working with our vendors and part stuff while they were there and promoting us while they were there. She basically ran the ball with that. She just asked me, she says, well, I said, yeah, if you want to go, we'll facilitate it. And you two can go. And they did. And they did a fantastic job. I had wonderful comments from people about those two 20-year-olds being down there and doing that last year.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Cool. I've seen, mine are boring. But I've seen some of the work she's posted, and I'm like, holy crap, I didn't think you could do that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff what she's doing for the artwork on there. And I never knew she had that in her 100%, but I mean, she has just really run with it. And she's on top of the business end and the creative end both, and she's great with people. I mean, she has just really set herself up really well. So,
well, she had a really good role model.
Apparently. Yeah. That's a good thing. So
yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah,
my kids all have their own aspirations. So that might phase out, them and RJ Cars eventually. Because like McKenna's got her own thing going on, and so does Matt will eventually too. He's kind of working towards that. So there might be some changes here in the coming years. Nothing right away, but I could see some things changing. And I've done everything I dreamed of here, really. I really have. It's been a success story that not too many people could have accomplished, and I did accomplish it. And just, I went through the wind lights a long time ago with everything I set out to do here, and I'm pretty proud of that. So,
Heck yeah. Absolutely. You should be.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we've learned a lot about you, and I love all of the information that you shared, all the lessons, all the advice. I think that that's just super cool. So, as we kind of wrap up today's podcast, some of the things that I've taken from you really will resonate with me. But those things are, like, one, I love the fact that you took an active role. You were proactive in getting your business out there in people's view, like going through publications or doing builds that got your shop attention. I love that you make an effort to recognize your employees, because the culture of your company speaks a lot about who you are as a business owner, as well as the type of work that you do, and your employees will always be your number one advocate. And then the last one is, for all the challenges that you mentioned for small businesses, right? Like, there's some of these things that companies just flat out don't really think about. Like you said, especially in the automotive industry, thinking about like having staffing issues, because we see that in every industry right now. But, dealing with parts issues, dealing with vendors, dealing with those types of things. Like, you brought up some really good points that sometimes companies don't always consider, or they just aren't capable of stepping back a minute and saying like, hey, I know I have a need for my business, but those other businesses have their own situations that they're dealing with. And in your example, some of those meant like, hey, we've got to close our doors, or this just isn't working for us anymore.
I like the fact that you're continually learning. You took some coaching, you were reading books, you're always expanding your knowledge. And because we've heard so many horror stories about people not paying their taxes and not understanding. They know how to do restorations, but they don't know how to do the back of the house stuff, the business side of things.
That's a good point. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, we do have a sneaky little thing that we like to do to all of our guests. We call this the speed round. And these are like questions that I'm going to ask you. I want the very first response that comes off the top of your head. Don't put too much thought into it. And we'll see where we go. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. So what is your favorite race driver, team, hot rod, muscle car, or truck? You get any one of those.
Oh, man. I don't know about racing drivers. I watch Supercross, so I know more than I do car racing these days. So I like 70 Dodge Super Bs, 68 GTX convertibles, 68 Dodge Charger RTs. Those are three of my favorites. 70 Dodge Dirt Swinger, obviously, too. So
nice. Love it. Favorite tool in your toolbox?
Oh, man. Elbow grease.
There you go. And
elbow grease is it.
Do you have a favorite event, car show, even racetrack?
The Chrysler car show at Carlisle is one of my favorites. I've always enjoyed that event and spent a lot of time there over the years. I've done the Mopar Nationals a few years too, but really the Chrysler at Carlisle show is one of my favorites.
That's awesome. And then our very last question, this one stumps everybody. What's the best advice you've ever received, and from whom?
Oh man, I've gotten lots of advice over the years. So there's a local guy, Mike Hoyt. He owns Crane Tech Incorporated here in Arkport, and he told me a long time ago that if you're not growing, you're falling behind. So I think that was good advice. I also had another guy years ago. It was an insurance sales guy. His name was Hank. Can't remember his last name, but Hank said, "Let patience temper your ambition." That was another very good one. So.
I like that.
Wow. That's awesome advice. Well, before we wrap up here,
what's awesome is I actually remember these things, Barry, and I haven't forgotten them. And they were things that people told me decades ago, and I still remember. So,
well, that's good. Yeah. I'm going to ask, it's a different question, but in your onboarding form, you talked about hunting and things like that, but you talked about the timber frame stuff. This is, we throw in a question that's not in our script now and then. Tell us about the timber frame stuff you're working on. That's really intrigues me.
I always liked the looks of timber frame buildings and just, fell in love with that stuff. So, there's a local guy who's a friend of mine. His name's Sean at Highland Timber Framing. And Sean, I saw a building that he was working on many years ago, a house that he was building for someone. And I took an interest in it, and I got to go look at it. And I met Sean at a Allegheny Artisans tour in recent years. We hit it off. We're friends now, and he has taught me that craft. So I drive to his place quite often and work on that. So I'm actually have a design for a monitor barn type design, which is high in the middle and then wings off each side. And I actually 2 winters ago went into my woods on my 73 acres. I logged my own trees out by myself, and I had some help limbing a few times. But as far as taking them out, I took the trees down myself. And one weekend, I remember I took down 30 trees in one weekend. That's a lot of time. So, and now we are actually milling out the timbers and processing them at the shop and doing the mortise and tenon work, which is we're doing traditional joinery. So I've got antique chisels that I've restored and I'm using. I actually bought my own sawmill. So some of the logs I am milling myself. Some of them I'm using an Amish mill to do the saw out the timbers. So yeah, in my spare time. that's my therapy.
That is so cool.
Yeah, that is so cool. I read that and I go, I got to ask you about that. So awesome. Hey, so and that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Russell, for joining us today. Russ, can you remind listeners where they can find you, connect with you, purchase, hire you to do a restoration?
My website, rjcars.com. Or you can call us, look us up on there in Arkport, New York.
Very cool.
And we know they're on Instagram too. Instagram and Facebook.
Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those social media platforms we're on also. Look us up.
Nice. Love it. Absolutely love it. Gearheads and Gasoline, fueling your success. We know you don't want to miss an episode, so don't forget to smash that bell so that you get notified of every new episode. Click that like button, leave us a comment, and share with your people. And visit us repeatedly. We love it.